Welcome to The Plant Report, a radio show that educates about the green world one plant at a time. The Plant Report is a new educational resource about plants, herbal medicine, ethnobotany, and the human-plant relationship. Listen to our podcast, read our blog, watch our videos, and learn from experts and the plants. The Plant Report is a project of Sustainable World Radio and is hosted by Jill Cloutier. Thanks for listening to The Plant Report because every plant has a story. Our plant today is the thistle. To learn more about this prickly and unpopular plant, I spoke with Larry Santoyo, permaculture teacher and lead instructor at the Permaculture Academy in Los Angeles, California. Larry is an ecological designer, green business consultant, and senior planner at Earthflow Designs. In this episode, Larry talks about how to read the landscape, what thistles are telling us about soil quality, and how to create the conditions for thistles to happen. Hopefully, after listening to this episode, you'll have a better appreciation for the lowly yet important thistle. Welcome, Larry Santoyo, and I'm so pleased that you're here on the Plant Report to talk about the parable of the thistle. Let's start talking about thistles, something that many people have probably never talked about.
It's funny that we talk about the thistles on the plant segment because I think that plants have so much to teach us. They could be on any segment.
That's definitely true. They do. And you have worked with plants a lot of your life, I think. And maybe give our listeners, before we get into the parable of the thistle, just an idea of how long you have been working with plants and permaculture.
I pretty much cut my teeth in permaculture design, working in restoration work. But before that, of course, like a lot of us, we started as gardeners. When I was a kid, I had a gardening route. Before I could even drive, I used to wheel around a lawnmower and knock door to door to see if I could mow lawns. And then I just kind of got into a horticultural curiosity and just kind of pursued it. And I think that was my into resource management and restoration ecology.
Yes, Larry, and you've been working a long time and have taught many, many people about permaculture and plants. And I've always loved what you've talked about when you spoke about thistles, and that's why I wanted you on the show today. So can you share with our listeners your parable of the thistle?
The idea that we look at every place, every plant, and every animal, and that it has a function. So learning what that function is one of our chores, one of our duties for those alert enough among us in not just restoration work, but just sort of that whole idea of knowing our place and our sense of place is more to the point. The thistle, and when I say a thistle, or when people think of a thistle, what do you think is the first thing that comes to their mind?
Ouch.
What's the first thing in your mind? Yeah, ouch. Like it's got spines on it. If you've ever broken it, it's got that kind of bitter, milky sap that comes out. And if you're a gardener, if you've ever tried to pull one out of the ground, you know that it's got a long taproot. I get that about that far. And what we just described are intrinsic characteristics of this plant. And I'll go into that a little bit more in a second. But first, let's forget about that. Let's talk about something soft and nice, like grass. What's the first thing you think of when you think of grass?
Mowing the lawn?
Mowing the lawn actually mimics animal behavior. Not that animals push around lawnmowers, but what they do is they are grazers. Grasses and heavy animals co-evolve. Everywhere on the planet where there's grasslands, there is indigenous and native heavy animals who feed on those grasses. So grasses like to be mowed, but they don't like the thatch to be put on top of them. What grasses have done is they have made an agreement with the heavy animals to store the energy that the grasses create. The grasses themselves grow and basically is stored in the mobile parts of that ecosystem, the heavy animals. So you don't see a lot of grasses that grow through the fallen grasses before it. It's usually stored as a heavy animal, right? Grasses also have intrinsic characteristics. Grasses grow from the base. They don't grow from the tip. They grow from the base. They have basal meristems. So other shrubs, they grow from the tip. So when a cell grows, it grows from the tip and puts on a cell at the top, at the top, at the top. But grasses push from the bottom. Every cell pushes the one above it up higher and higher and higher and higher. And that is part of the evidence that it's working with grazing animals. See, if it was grazing from the top, it would kill the growth area of the plant, but it grows from the bottom, so it keeps pushing it up, feeding basically the heavy animals. What would happen if, in fact, the cattle or these other heavy animals overgrazed an area? And certainly on the Central Coast, certainly anywhere in the West, we have enough evidence. People could just probably look out their windows as they're driving and see overgrazed areas. Overgrazed, that means too much animal pressure on the ground. So what starts to happen when that happens? When you think of an overgrazed area, what is happening?
There's no biodiversity and there's no plant life. Compacted soil.
Exactly. They've compacted it and reduced or eliminated the cover of the grasses. Although the grasses like a little bit, they can't handle it if there's too much. But it's at that point that the earth responds to that overgrazing, right? And it will call in the thistles. It calls in the thistles to come up, and it's only in overgrazed or disturbed land that you see the thistles. Primarily, thistles it's sort of called in when it's been disturbed or destroyed or degraded. You see that it was a grazing area. Now, all of a sudden, there's thorns and there's bitter, and these deep taproots that are remining the minerals again that the grasses once did. So as we look at a field of thistles, we're really looking at that point in evolution, that point in natural succession where it's saying, no more grazing. We need a little protection. And all of a sudden, that's what happens. This blanket of thorny protection starts to happen. But in that, there's also flowers that call in little bugs, that call in little birds, and it sets the stage to start softening that soil, invigorating it, decompacting it with those taproots, right? And it's kind of chisel plowing through that hard pan again, and it's kind of making it ready for that next level of succession. Sort of our idea of looking at something that we used to cuss and curse at, and actually taking back and saying, wow, that's a beautiful illustration of natural succession. That's a beautiful illustration of me needing to know what is actually going on out there, instead of just cussing at something and saying, there's so many lessons to learn from just observation like that.
So basically, the thistle, it could almost be seen as nature's first responder in a way.
It can, and in a lot of areas it very much is. There isn't enough time for a different species to kind of set the stage, reinvigorating and nutrifying an area, and it may need something a little more definitive, like no more grazing. And it puts up a tremendous amount of biomass. Any surface, any ground that's pumping that much biomass really wants to heal itself, really wants to repair or move into the next level of succession, which in that case would be, woody and herbaceous shrubs. So it would be sort of those, vines and berries and, things like that we could start growing in those areas.
The thistle then is almost like a sign that the next level of succession is needed almost, and that the thistle will break up the soil. What else does it do? What is the purpose? Does the long taproot?
What's happening is that once the ground is compacted, it needs something to loosen it up, and a taproot does exactly that. You rarely see thistles in a beautiful mulched garden. You rarely see, people say, how do you get rid of thistles? And I would say, well, water, mulch, and organic fertilizer. They hate that. Disturb it or drive over it or ride too many horses or take a blade over it, a tractor or something. Then we've mimicked over disturbance, and that calls in the thistles. created the conditions for thistles, the grasses to happen, or vegetables to happen.
So the thistle really is you can look at it as a signal and read the landscape and see that it's telling you what's going on in that landscape.
One of the clear indications of disturbance, for sure. Yeah, and it also, it like I said, with that biomass, there's flowers that happen, so insects are attracted to it, and along with the insects, birds, of course, will be attracted to it. Along with birds, before they fly away, they leave a little bundle of nitrogen and phosphate and, perhaps a berry seed in there too.
So is the thistle also, would that keep grazers off the land and maybe stop the disturbance because of the sharp?
That's the idea of it, but of course if cattle don't have anything else to eat, don't have any place else to go, they'll trample it. But the idea is that this area, this little strip, this swath of area that was overgrazed or out of balance or, undernourished, will be protected while the offering of grasses somewhere else is there too. So cattle, they'll go the easy route. They'll go over to the grasses and leave the area alone.
How interesting. So I love that idea of thistle as nature's response.
Yeah, it sort of calls, the landscape will call in the thistles for that protection that it offers, for sure.
And how did you learn all this, Larry Santoyo?
Everybody knows that. Just look at it. And I guess enough watching and enough, overgrazed pastures and paddocks, it kind of dawns on me that, maybe I'm looking at something that we caused to happen. And then when I see it in natural systems, that of course this is, protecting the landscape. So, and then it's actually easy to plan that when we're talking about succession. You just kind of go in there. Those big yellow rain slickers are easy to get and wear, and you just kind of zip and slip right through thistles without impaling you. You walk right in and plant in the thistles. Plant your berries or plant whatever it is that you're decided on right in the thistles without hacking the thistles down. If you till in the thistles, you've just created the conditions that mimic overgrazing and overuse, and you created the conditions for thistles to happen, not your plant. If you plant berries right in the growing thistles, then the thistles offer some protection and the nutrient to that.
That's so interesting, because most people would just look at the thistle and think, what a pain, I hate that plant.
Yeah, right. And want to mow it or worse yet, disc it out or rototill it out. And again, just mimicking the conditions that cause. It's kind of funny when you think about it. When you dig out the weeds and just causes more weeds. If you just stop and look and just follow nature's direction, follow nature's direction, it's handing you the answer. What comes next?
And so basically we are keeping our lawns in a perpetual state, not allowing that succession to happen. I guess we couldn't because yeah.
It's like a freeze frame. We're constantly maintaining it through external energy at that level of succession.
And that's why it takes so much energy.
Exactly.
So anything else you want to add about thistles for our listeners today?
Well, I think that, I just want everybody to think of it differently and look at it differently. And not just the thistle, but every plant, every animal, every place has a lesson to teach us.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again.
Thanks for listening to The Plant Report. The Plant Report is produced by Jill Cloutier and is a project of Sustainable World Radio. For more podcasts about plants, permaculture, and ecology, visit our website, sustainableworldradio.com, and you can also find us on iTunes, Facebook, and Twitter. The Plant Report is created for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any health condition. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to thank the plants for everything they do.